A year ago, this robot could barely wave a handkerchief. That's not an exaggeration for effect. That's literally what critics said about China's humanoid robots at last year's Spring Festival Gala. Stiff, clumsy, awkward transitions between moves. The kind of performance that made people comfortable. Machines that could gesture, sort of, if you were feeling generous about it. This year, the same event. The same stage. And this time, those robots did backflips off a wall. Not a slow, cautious hop with a spotter standing just out of frame. A full inversion, mid-routine, landing clean, back in formation with the rest of the group like it was nothing. Something happened in 12 months that nobody outside a handful of labs in Shanghai and Beijing saw coming. And by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly what changed, and why the people who study this stuff for a living are struggling to explain it. Let's start with what actually happened on stage. On February 16, 2026, China Media Group's Spring Festival Gala, the broadcast that airs every Lunar New Year to hundreds of millions of households across China, opened its robotic segment with dozens of Unitree G1 and H2 humanoid units, not standing still, not gesturing carefully, performing full martial arts choreography in formation, alongside young human kung fu students from Henan's Tegu Martial Arts School. Synchronized punches, kicks, weapon handling, swords, staffs, nunchucks, and a specific routine called Drunken Fist, one of the hardest styles in traditional kung fu to fake convincingly, because it requires exaggerated, off-balance movement that only looks controlled if the person performing it has genuine command over their own stability. Robots do not naturally have that. Balance is one of the single hardest problems in humanoid robotics. And these machines were performing a style built entirely around looking like they'd lost it. Here's the number that should stop you. These robots moved at formation speeds up to 4 meters per second, switching between complex weapon routines and rapid position changes without a single visible stumble across the entire segment. Now, before you take all of this at face value, because you shouldn't take any tech company's claims at face value, there's a real controversy sitting underneath this footage that's worth addressing directly. Unitree says every robot in that performance was fully autonomous. No remote piloting, no puppeteering from off-stage, no pre-recorded animation dressed up as live performance. And a lot of people online don't believe that. Skeptics have pointed out how convenient it is that a company selling humanoid robots would want the public to believe their machines can do this on their own, with zero human intervention, live on the biggest broadcast stage in the country. That's a fair thing to be suspicious of. Extraordinary footage from a company with something to sell deserves scrutiny, not blind acceptance. So hold that thought. We'll come back to it. Because here's the scale this actually happened at, and it's bigger than almost anyone reporting on it seems to grasp. This wasn't a tech demo streamed to a few 100,000 robotics enthusiasts. The Spring Festival Gala reached close to 679 million viewers. Grandparents, kids doing homework in the next room, families who have never thought about robotics once in their lives, watching machines perform a martial art passed down for centuries, live on New Year's Eve. 679 million people just watched robots do this. At once. As the centerpiece of a national broadcast, not a corner of it. Sit with that number for a second, because it reframes everything else in this story. This wasn't a niche moment that went viral after the fact. It was placed at the center of the single most watched broadcast in China's entire calendar by design. Now, back to that skepticism. Unitree's own technical breakdown, released after the broadcast, claims the performance included several genuine world firsts. The first fully autonomous humanoid robot cluster kung fu performance ever recorded. The first continuous freestyle table vaulting parkour sequence performed by humanoid robots. And this is the one worth pausing on. A launched aerial flip that sent a robot roughly 10 feet into the air, before landing the maneuver cleanly. 10 feet. A machine with no organic sense of balance, no instinct for falling, launching itself higher than most human door frames and sticking the landing. And underneath all of it were upgraded dexterous hands, new hardware specifically built to grip weapons, transition rapidly between grip types, and handle the props fast enough to keep pace with human performers standing right next to them. That detail matters more than it sounds like it should. Most humanoid robots that can walk convincingly still have clumsy, imprecise hands. Hand dexterity has lagged years behind leg and torso control across the entire industry. Solving hands and full-body martial arts choreography in the same product cycle is not a small technical jump. It's several small technical jumps happening at once. Which brings us to the moment that actually should unsettle you more than any backflip. But before we get there, one more record, because it's the one most coverage buried. Unitree confirmed the routine included a 7.5 rotation Airflare spin, a breakdancing move so demanding that landing it marked a world first for any humanoid platform. A machine spinning on the ground, off balance on purpose, 7.5 times, and standing back up like it meant to. It's worth understanding why Kung Fu specifically, and not just spinning tricks. This wasn't a random choice of party trick. Unitree's own team described the concept as fusing the martial arts spirit with modern technology, using the robots to present the power and beauty of wushu, the Chinese term for martial arts, as a message about cultural inheritance and innovation happening at the same time. This year's gala also marked the Year of the Fire Horse on the Chinese zodiac calendar, a year traditionally associated with speed, energy, and bold forward motion. The timing wasn't an accident. The performance was built to be read as a statement, not just a spectacle. 1,000 years of martial tradition, handed off to machines, on the exact night the whole country stops to look forward. That context matters, because it changes what the backflip actually represents. It's not just an engineering flex. It's China explicitly choosing its oldest physical art form as the proving ground for its newest technology, betting that if a robot can convincingly perform something this culturally sacred in front of this many people at once, the message about where the technology has arrived lands harder than any spec sheet ever could. Near the end of the routine, a robot performed what Unitree is calling a two-step wall-assisted backflip, pushing off a vertical surface mid-sequence, inverting completely, and landing back in formation without breaking stride. Parkour athletes train for years to do that safely. It requires split-second spatial awareness, real-time balance correction, and a kind of physical confidence that, until extremely recently, was assumed to require a nervous system to pull off. If that clip is genuinely autonomous, with no remote assistance and no hidden puppeteering, then something has shifted in how fast these systems can learn physical risk. Not walk without falling, actual risk. The kind of move where getting it 5% wrong means a very public, very expensive faceplant in front of hundreds of millions of people. So here's where the skepticism and the scale actually collide. Even the most doubtful critics watching this footage aren't arguing the robots looked bad. They're arguing about how much of it was truly unassisted. Nobody's disputing that the physical capability itself represents a real leap from 12 months ago, a robot that could barely wave a handkerchief. The argument isn't whether progress happened, it's how much of what we saw was the robot, and how much was still quietly a human somewhere behind the curtain. And that might be the most honest way to end this. We don't fully know yet. Unitree's CEO, Wang Xingxing, has said the company plans to ship 20,000 of these humanoid units in 2026, nearly 4 times the roughly 5,500 they shipped the year before, a 2025 total that reportedly already outpaced several major competitors combined. That's not a company quietly perfecting a lab demo. That's a company scaling toward mass deployment, fast, betting that what 679 million people just watched wasn't a one-off performance, but an early preview of a product line about to show up everywhere. Which means we're not going to have to wait long to find out whether backflipping, weapon-wielding, fully autonomous humanoid robots are actually here, or whether what hundreds of millions watched on Lunar New Year's Eve was still, in some quiet way, more performance than proof. Either answer is enormous. What do you think actually happened on that stage? Genuine autonomy, or something still being helped along? Let me know where you land.